At some point in a successful leadership career, a different question begins to surface. Not whether you can succeed, but whether you're still doing the work you're meant to do next. On paper, everything still works. Your role feels solid, your reputation is established, and your path still makes sense. But internally, something has shifted. The question is no longer whether you can succeed here. It's whether this is still the right place for everything you know how to do. You begin to realize the next chapter of your growth may not exist inside the work you're doing today. Not because you're finished, but the exact opposite, because you're not. You know you still have more to contribute, more impact to make, more growth ahead. And that realization creates a moment of decision. Sometimes that happens while you're still in the role. When the work that once energized you starts to feel narrower than your capability. Sometimes it happens after a major milestone, when you realize the question is no longer how to succeed where you are, but where your experience belongs next. And sometimes it happens after stepping away from a significant role, when the space finally allows you to ask what you actually want next. If that question has crossed your mind recently, you're not alone. It tends to appear at a very specific moment in a leadership career, when you've built something meaningful, but begin to sense there may be another chapter to what you want to build. I'm Selena Sterlin. I'm a next chapter strategist, and I work with accomplished senior and executive leaders, C-suite executives, executive vice presidents, and managing partners from leading technology companies, consulting firms, and creative organizations. Leaders who have spent decades building successful careers in high-stakes environments. Leaders who reach this exact moment. You've built an extraordinary career. You've delivered meaningful results, but eventually something begins to shift. Not in your capability, but in how you want to use it. One of the reasons this moment can feel unclear is because of how success tends to work at this level. Most senior leaders build their careers inside strong organizations, places where your role is clear, where your impact is visible, and where your influence grows over time, team by team, initiative by initiative, and role by role. But eventually something changes, not in your capability and not necessarily in the organization. What begins to change is the relationship between the two. You start to realize that the organization that helped you build your success may no longer be the place where the next stage of your growth will happen. And that realization raises a different question, not just what you're capable of doing, but where your experience should go next. Until that direction becomes clear, people will interpret your experience through what they already know. Your last title, your last company, your last chapter. And honestly, that's natural. If you haven't defined where you're going next, others will default to your past. At senior levels, opportunity is shaped by how clearly your experience connects to what comes next. Not just what you've done, but how your leadership translates into the future you're stepping towards. That's why this moment isn't only about how the market sees you. It's also about clarity on what you want the next stage of your career to be. Because those two things need to align: where you want to go and how your experience is understood in that context. One of the first things I help clients to do is to step back and see both clearly. Where you want the next chapter of your career to go and how your experience needs to be understood for that opportunity to exist. From there, we shape a clear strategy for where your experience belongs next and how that transition happens, not through applying to jobs, but through the conversations, introductions, interviews, and negotiations that lead to the right opportunity. For many leaders, that means stepping into another leadership role, often with greater scope, influence, or growth than the one they're leaving. For others, it may mean consulting or fractional leadership work that allows them to apply their experience in a new way. Every path looks different, but the process of defining what comes next tends to follow a very similar structure. If this moment in your career feels familiar, the next step is simple. You can schedule a next chapter strategy call. This is a confidential conversation where we step back and look at three things together. First, how the market interprets your experience today. Second, what the next chapter of your career could look like. And third, whether working together would meaningfully support that transition. Sometimes the outcome of this conversation is clarity. Sometimes it's strategy, and sometimes that leads to us working together more closely. Either way, the goal is simple: to help you see the next chapter of your career more clearly. I work with a limited number of executives at any given time. The work is strategic, personal, and high touch. If you find yourself in this moment, not rushing, not reacting, but thoughtfully considering what comes next, the next step is a strategy call. You can book a time below that works for you. I look forward to the conversation.